Alright, Wind, new patch, new bindings. We're here in 3.10, and the very first thing you need to do is go through, unbind every control that you have. Second is if I have a section that's not opened, like flight view right here, there's nothing in here, so just don't worry about it. Third thing, I am not currently set up with an TFCS HOTAS, but I do have one, and I wasn't going to pull it back out for this video. Most of the binds are going to be the same from the 3.8 video anyway. The only thing that's really changing is going to be targeting, and we're adding VTOL, and I don't think we added VTOL in that. But anyway, so let's get started. For flight cockpit, pretty much this whole section is going to be on the right side of the base of your T16000M joystick. You want to bind eject, self-destruct, flight system ready, open close door toggle, and lock unlock toggle. Doesn't particularly matter what order, just remember them. You don't want to accidentally eject when you're trying to open doors for people. Next, we're going to go down to flight movement, and your pitch is going to be your Y. Your yaw is either going to be your X or Z, and then your roll is going to be the opposite. So it's going to be, if you bind yaw to your X, your roll is going to be Z, and vice versa.
I think I had it the same as TCS, so yaw on Z.
Yeah, I do it the same way. It's like if you play flight sims, you definitely want your yaw on Z, just because it's very hard to get in the mindset of like switching that control from roll to yaw, and then when you go back to your flight sims, it's gonna confuse you. So I suggest if you play flight sims, make yaw your Z, make roll your X. So for speed limiter, that's going to be the little scroll wheel that's on the left side of your throttle. And it wants to be speed limiter ABS. Next we got strafe up / down. You're going to bind this to the flappy paddles on your throttle. Next we have strafe left and right. Left and right on the little index analog stick. And a very important one, you're going to want to bind strafe forward / back invert button on the back of your throttle, so the one that's all the way on the left side. Yeah, oh, and this is something that was very common that we got feedback on, is people didn't go into their game settings. Okay, so in game settings, you want to find flight HOTAS thrust invert toggle, and you want to set that to no. So what this does is if you tap it, when it's set to yes, it will toggle it, right? But if you hold it, it will act as like a hold. You don't want to toggle it, because what happens is there's no indicator for if it's forward or backward. So you get into your ship, you don't know. So I think it's best to have it not a toggle, but a push and hold bind. After the invert setting, you want to go down to cruise control forward on the bottom hat. Afterburner is going to be on the back of the throttle, that other button, the one that's more to the right, next to the one that you bound invert to. Landing systems, we're going to bind that to the two-way hat down. For toggle VTOL, we're going to bind that to up on that same hat switch. Quantum travel system toggle and quantum drive are both going to be bound to the cage uncage button that's on the side of your throttle. You want to go down to lock selected target, and on the hat switch on your joystick, bind that to up. Next, you want switch flight lead / lag reticle toggle. That is going to be the right button on your joystick. You want to come down to cycle lock hostile, reset to closest, back on your hat switch. Then we want to bind cycle lock all back and forward, left and right on the same hat switch. Scanning mode toggle is the next bind. Where you want to bind that is on the left side, one of the top buttons on the outside. So either the left one or the right one. Scanning radar ping, bind that to your trigger. Then scanning radar angle, increase and decrease, bind that to up and back on your hat switch on your joystick. Real quick, which did you bind scanning mode to, the right or left?
I did the right one, so I'm gonna put mine on the left one.
Yeah, mining mode on the left one. Fire mining laser is going to be your trigger. Switch mining laser is going to be the middle button on your joystick. Increase, decrease mining laser power is going to be the slider that's at the base of your joystick. Activate consumable 1, 2, and 3. Just make that the hat switch on your joystick. Now we're going to go down into turrets. For pitch, you want your Y axis. For yaw, you want your X axis. Okay, for turret gyro stabilization toggle, you want to bind that to the left button on your joystick. Enable/disable turret speed limiter, you want to bind that to your cage uncage button on your throttle. That's the orange button. For velocity limiter absolute, you want to bind that to your throttle. Moving on to flight weapons, weapon group 1, weapon group 2, that's going to be your trigger. Okay, so for cycle gimbal assist standard mode, standard gimbal and gimbal lock modes, bind that to the left button on your joystick. For acquire missile lock tap and launch missile hold, you want to bind that to the middle button on your joystick. For countermeasures, you want that to be bound to forward on your middle hat switch on your throttle. And for cycle countermeasure ammo, you want that to be back on that same hat switch. Flight power, increase priority for thrusters, shields, and weapons. Bind those to the bottom 3 buttons on the left side of your stick's base. And then for reset priority, bind that to the middle button. And for your last bind, what you're going to want to bind is your VoIP push to talk back on the top hat switch, and then go into Discord and make a, or whatever VoIP you're using when you see this video, bind it to forward on the top hat switch. Real quick, one of the things that we're doing with your throttle, hat switches on the side of them. So your top one is communications, your middle one is your countermeasures, and your bottom one, this is various ship controls that you might want. Cruise control is a definite need. Match speed you might want, you could bind that to the bottom hat, and there's a couple other things that you could bind to the bottom hat, but really cruise control is the main one. Most of the other stuff I don't really use. So the last thing I want to talk about is targeting and how that works with these controls. So lock select a target. This is going to target whatever you're looking at. Cycle lock hostile reset to closest, that should be back on your hat switch. That's going to select the closest enemy towards you. And then cycle lock all back and forward, that's going to just cycle through targets. Pinning targets though, is if you tend to do a lot of multi-crew, this is worth looking into, because if you pin a target, everyone on your crew will see that as a pin target. So if you're trying to coordinate gunners, this is good for that. However, if you're just dogfighting or something like that, I don't find a use for it. One last thing, one more thing that I saw a lot of people being confused about is go to controls, go to down here where it says mouse, change that over to whatever joystick input your throttle is. For me it's 2. And then invert settings, you want to find strafe forward right here, and you want to make sure that this is either set to invert or not invert. Every throttle is different, so if you get into the game and you have your throttle at 0% and you're going forward at 100%, you need to adjust this and invert it to whatever your current setting is.